It is 9 o'clock. This meeting will be operated under the terms of the Nebraska meeting laws, a copy of which is against the wall. I would like to ask everyone to please turn your cell phones to silence or vibrate. And I'll do that myself. And we will stand to say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will call ourselves, we'll do the roll call for the Douglas County Board of Equalization.
Commissioner Borgeson, Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Here. We have first two items are approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday. My mic is on.
No.
Tuesday.
That's okay. Yeah, it sounded great without it, actually.
Yeah. Okay. I love the respect I'm getting. Okay. Approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, November 13th, 2012. And B is a call for a meeting and set Tuesday, December 4th, 2012, as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property.
Motion to approve A and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I see no lights on. Call for the vote.
Motion passes.
Next is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for members of the audience to be heard at this time for a maximum of 3 minutes on any topic not on the agenda as it relates to the Board of Equalization. Is there anyone who wants to address the Board of Equalization? Seeing none, we will go to the resolutions. We have two. D is certified assessment corrections, and E is approving application for tax exemption on motor vehicles recommended for approval by the county treasurer.
Motion to approve D and E and adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Motion passes.
Now we will convene as the Douglas County Noxious Weed Control Authority. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Borgeson, Commissioner Boyle,
Here.
Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Here. We have three items today. The first is approval of the minutes of the Noxious Weed Control Authority meeting held on Tuesday, October 2nd, 2012.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote. Citizen comments. This is a
Motion passes.
This is a time when guests present in the chamber, members of the public, speakers to be heard at this time for a maximum of 3 minutes as they relate to the Noxious Weed Control Authority. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? Seeing none, we will do the resolution placing special assessments on property in Douglas County.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Oh, and adjourn. I'm sorry.
Okay. And,
Right.
Very good.
I was going to say that.
The vote is on the resolution and adjournment.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. Motion passes.
Next, we have the, we will convene as the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Call for the roll.
Commissioner Borgeson, Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha.
Yes,
Mr.
here.
Chairman.
Here. And item 1 is minutes and claims. Approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, November 13th, 2012. And B is approval of claims submitted for payment processed through Tuesday, November 27th, 2012. A complete listing is on file in the office of the County Clerk Comptroller and available at the County Clerk Comptroller's webpage. The address is located on your television screen.
Motion to approve A and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I see no lights on. Call for the vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion passes.
Next, we have the consent agenda. There are total of 10 items. We are removing item F. We will address that at a different time because there's still some issues with that resolution. We have items A through K, which is, as I said, a total of 10 items. Is there anything anyone wants pulled out for discussion? Yes.
If I may, I just would simply, we do have in here item H is appointment of a new member to the Douglas County Fair Board who happens to be a neighbor of ours, and I've watched her grow up. Lindsay Golden is here this morning. She was recruited by another one of our Fair Board members. In the small world, we have the same farrier, Scott Olander, who is a real good talker. He's a Fair Board member and good recruiter, and that's how we ended up with what I think will be another good Fair Board member. So I just wanted you to be aware of
Lindsay,
what's in here.
Just raise your hand and wave if you want to say anything. You're welcome to come to the front. Okay. Okay, but you're not asking if you...
Not for a separate vote. I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention.
We need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes.
Okay, there are no recognitions or proclamations today. Now we have the citizen comment portion. This is an opportunity for members of the audience to be heard at this time for a maximum of 3 minutes on any topic not on the agenda as it relates to the governance of Douglas County. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? Seeing none, we have no presentations. Next is a public hearing. Item 6A, resolution authorizing budget adjustment for Risk Insurance Department in the amount of $650,000 increase to the General Fund Department expenditure budget to fund increased workers' compensation claim settlements. Joe, would you like to address that?
Yeah, this is just a follow-up to the last meeting. We talked about this, but then going back, we saw since this $650,000 had to be funded from reserves, it was then subject to a public hearing. So we ran the notice in the Daily Record, and this is just a formality to authorize it, but it's that same claim we discussed at last meeting.
Very good. Commissioner Boyle.
I wasn't at the last meeting, and so I, excuse me, would like, since it is a public hearing, is there a large claim that's out there somewhere?
Yes, there's like a $560,000 settlement that we've just made.
Okay, and what I don't want to get into all necessarily the particulars, although I think some information should be disclosed. Was it an industrial accident? Was it an automobile, or what was it involved?
It was the Lori Davis claim. Maybe do you know more?
This was just an accident at the health center, and this is just a matter of lump sum settling some things so we don't pay more money out over time.
So she was injured on the job?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Action can be taken today. Is there a motion?
Is the public hearing closed?
Oh, I will close the public. Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to address this? I'll close the public hearing. We need a motion and a second.
Move for the approval.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion passes.
Next, we have the Finance Committee, Commissioner Duda and Commissioner Morgan.
First of all,
Mike's not going on, but it is. Couple things. One is the budget report is submitted. Second thing is we have 2 reappointments to the audit committee. Paul Tomaso Moser, who's done a great job, and Joni Davis. I'd like to have both of those reappointed. The committee did approve that, so I'd make a motion to have those 2 reappointed for a 1-year term.
We have a motion and a second. I see no other lights on. Call for the vote. Yes.
Just clarification. Commissioner Morgan, the resolution reads 3 years.
Is it 3 years? I thought Paul only... Kathy, do you recall, wasn't Paul saying he only wanted 1 year, or was it 1 term?
This would be their final term.
Okay,
For
and
both
it's
of them,
3
I think.
years. He'd
Right,
do
I
it
believe
3
so.
years? Okay, I apologize. 1 term. Thank you, Tom. So I'd change it to the one term, 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have
Motion passes.
Next, we have administrative services. The first item on the City Source mobile application has been pulled and will be continued at Tuesday's December 4th meeting. Commissioner Tusha.
Yes, the next item we have approval of a MOU with MAPPA to acquire digital aerial photography in spring of 2013 as a part of the Nebraska-Iowa regional whatever, NIROC, I won't go there. We have Mike Shanlow from GIS to help explain this. Thanks.
And while Mike comes off, MOU means Memorandum of Understanding.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mike Shanlow, Douglas County GIS Department. Quick background on this project. This is a project that Douglas County has participated in. This will be, I believe, the 6th iteration of this collaborative project that is administered by MAPPA. And basically, it's a collaboration of different government agencies coming together to drive down some prices for acquiring this aerial photography, which is a product that's used every day by county employees and citizens. So we're really excited about this project. We actually have more than 7 counties participating this year in Nebraska and 2 counties in Iowa. Douglas County's share is the lowest, I'm happy to report, the lowest cost of all the projects we've participated in, yet we're going to get the best products we've ever received before. So there's a good trend of our costs going down and the quality of the products going up, and that continues. So I'm very excited about this. It's a good example of government agencies working together to save dollars, but also acquire very valuable products that'll be useful for a lot of folks. So, and by the way, that word orthophotography, I don't blame you.
After I looked at it the second time, I noticed, oh, it wasn't that bad.
Right. Orthophotography just basically is overhead digital aerial photography that's been rectified. So, but NIROC's a lot easier. So, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion and a second. I see no lights on for further discussion. Call for the vote.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Motion passes.
Next, we're going to have discussion regarding the county board's liquor license application process. Commissioner Morgan.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Kraft. I visited with Patrick a little bit about this, and Diane also from the county attorney's office, just to kind of clarify our role on this as far as approving the transfers when someone is just making transfer of the license over to a purchaser of that license, and the Liquor Commission makes the final approval. But I think Diane and I discussed this, also Patrick, that it's a little bit unclear and that we could make some improvements as far as that. And Patrick, if you want to.
Yeah, there's just a couple of issues. There was a recent situation where somebody simply purchased a building that already had a license, so they weren't applying for a new license, but it was so it would not fall under our rules of requiring the signatures from, showing that he got notice from the property owners within 500 feet. So that's an issue that Diane and I are going to discuss to determine if we should just include that. So everybody where there's a liquor license application at issue would have to comply with those county board policies. And also, we need to have a tighter mechanism in place for when we do get the abstract showing the people within 500 feet that they've been notified, just simply a formal process of review in our office to make sure that that's a valid affidavit, that it's a valid abstract, without having to actually go make phone calls or knock on doors to the people within that 500 feet radius.
Commissioner Tusha wanted to.
Yes, Commissioner Tusha.
On this, I know it's standard that if somebody has a liquor license and they sell to another person and they take over that liquor license, you don't need that. But being as we're doing this, does this go to the state now to get their approval, or do we just need our approval to be able to do this?
It'll still have to go to the state, I'm sure.
Yeah. It was just simply exempted from our policy. It would still go to the state.
Okay.
Now the question is, do you want to make those people comply with the same policies as those who are seeking new liquor licenses?
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Boyle.
I have a question of legal counsel. Does local government have anything to say really about liquor licenses? I mean, isn't the authority really in the state of Nebraska that?
It really is ultimately, but you do have the ability to make a recommendation. And in fact, when a person applies to the state sends the information to the county or the city, whichever jurisdiction, and requests a recommendation. If you don't act upon it, you only have 45 days to act, so it goes forward. But it is just a recommendation. There's a significance as to whether you deny or approve it, because if you deny it, then the applicant automatically gets a public hearing before the state, or there automatically will be one. Whereas if you approve it, I don't think there's a public hearing before the state. It just kind of goes through.
My question really goes a little bit further. Could we stop doing this, and would there be any consequences to anybody? I mean, are we just going through the motions?
Again, there's a 45-day window there where you're supposed to act. If you don't, then the process will just continue on to the state. So you're not required to. But again, they do look to the recommendation, I suppose, as far as wanting to know what the local government thinks about it, or what the citizens in that area think about it. So it's...
And Diane, wouldn't we, with what Patrick said, we'd be starting to put out the mailings to the residents so they'd have input to us? I think that's our intent, so that they're notified that there is a transfer of that license on that particular establishment.
There's a couple of things going on here. Currently, there's a county board resolution where you adopted your own internal policies regarding all liquor licenses that come to you and what you want the applicant to do. And one of those requirements is to give notice to the neighboring property owners. And so one of the questions that came up a few weeks ago was the people didn't get notice within the time frame that the policy required. But again, that's just a internal policy. And so that led to the next question of, do we really want to treat a transfer of an applicant the same as just a first application for a liquor license in an area where maybe there wasn't one before? And so Patrick and I were going to look at that internal policy to see and bring it back to you to see whether you still want to have something like that, whether you want to tweak it in any way. And then, of course, making sure that someone actually kind of follows up to make sure that those requirements have been followed or not followed.
Okay. Commissioner Boyle.
Under our present policy, who gets notified if the resident is not the owner?
The property owners get notified.
So the landlord. So if you have a house and the landlord lives in San Diego and has a view of the ocean every day, and a bar is going in or a transfer is taking place that's been a sore point for some residents, and so the tenants don't even know about it.
Well, again, a liquor license it's a public hearing, so it will be publicized. And then your own internal policy is that you're right, the property owner will be notified.
But the trouble is, it's not. The notice is a little difficult, and with people's lives, it's hard for them to get notice. I'd like to see us look at notifying the residents in addition to the owners. I think it makes a big difference, because you could have a family that's renting, and obviously, and could be affected by, and has been affected by a liquor license, maybe in a negative way, and they have something to say about it, and then they're not even told about it, they're not aware of it, they don't read the daily record, and so the change has taken place, and the guy in San Diego's happy. So I just suggest that. I think I'd like us to notify the residents.
Commissioner, again, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
The notice is not done by us, it's done by the applicant, and again, so that would mean that, actually right now they do an abstract, and they determine by that who their owners are, and they send that out. So in addition to that, it would be sending letters to the actual addresses.
Yeah, I think, just to occupant, we'll get there. I get stuff to occupant every once in a while. And occupant, there's a change coming in this bar ownership. I think occupant would cover it. That'd be a simple way to do it, to make sure you get the tenants. I'd like to see you consider that in your rules while you're considering this, because I think that's much more meaningful than just telling the fellow in San Diego.
Well, we'll put something together for,
Okay.
and possibly for committee, maybe first, and then the county board, but you can determine if you want it to come straight to the county board. But we'll put something in draft form.
Good. Send it to Pam's committee, will you?
That's probably appropriate.
I know it. That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Now we have Commissioner Tusha will take the next item.
Thank you. This is a presentation on air right agreement for 420 South 18th Street in Omaha, building renovation, and Jerry Leahy is here to introduce a couple of gentlemen for us. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jerry Leahy, Public Property. I brought this to the Administrative Services Committee a couple of weeks ago as a possible presentation of the development of the 420 South 18th building, which was formerly the Army Corps of Engineers. Obviously, we own the 408 building.com building on South 18th, and the developers would very much like to have the architect present their plan to you, to the entire board, and no action is required today, but possibly, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. There's only 2 meetings left in December, but at any rate, I'll introduce Michael Alley from Alley Pointer, and he has a presentation.
Thank you for hearing our request. We've had the benefit of participating in a lot of historic renovations throughout our downtown, and Omaha has really benefited from substantial renovations. By virtue of looking at so many different historic structures, we've probably done a study on almost every building that has potential for renovation, and this is a building that we've looked at, I would say, half a dozen times for various developers. And the kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of the historic renovation projects in downtown have pretty well been done, and what's really great is now developers are looking at these slightly more complicated buildings, and this happens to be one of those complicated buildings. With every potential tenant we've looked at for this building, or developer we've looked at for this building, the complicating factor is that it's sort of hemmed in. The building is built to the property lines, and so there's no opportunity to create fenestration or windows on the west facade in particular. So this particular developer and owner would like to occupy this building. We'll show you kind of how the building's intended to be used, but all of this kind of hinges on the ability to create windows on the upper levels for apartments. So Will Corcoran with our office is going to take you through, I think maybe you've received a packet of information. We can project the images if you'd like us to.
Please.
Okay. If I can figure out the technology. Oh, sorry, I just missed it. I won't touch any buttons. Small ones might look better.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, as Michael mentioned, the property that we're looking at is for our client is called Catering Creations. They're currently located on Pacific Street, right behind Spirit World, I believe 78th. And they're looking to acquire a property at 420 South 18th Street. It's an old Army Corps of Engineer building that used to be an auto dealership. Right now, the site that they're looking at would kind of position them in the middle of a couple of other cultural institutions. And what they're hoping to do with the space is bring all of their production facility. They're considered one of the top caterer in the region, and they'd like to be able to host fundraisers, weddings, other events at the facility, and then use the top 2 floors for lofts.
So as you can see on page 3, there's an image showing what the what the condition of the building is now and what it was, and that we hope to revert it to. It was a pretty historically significant building. It was an auto dealership that I mentioned, and we feel that if we have rights to develop the west facade and put windows on that side of the building, we can also increase the light and openness on that side to allow lofts on all sides of the building. So in accordance with the building code, what we need to be able to produce windows on that side that are equal in size to the windows on the other sides is 16 feet away from the facade. We need to be able to consider wouldn't be a buildable envelope. So by providing us with that air easement, saying that for a period of 99 years, we're able to occupy the air and not change the performance of the parking lot at all. It would just allow us to introduce windows onto that facade of the building. Is there any questions? Okay.
Commissioner Rogers. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You can go after that again. The budget one.
Commissioner Boyle.
I think this is an excellent proposal. It really looks like a wonderful use of the building, and I like the mixed use and all that goes with it. Plus, I think it makes a great deal of sense to have that western exposure. You need it. You really do. And a little side note is that I recently attended an event that this group catered, and the food was so incredibly good that I sought them out and told them and got their card. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, if I'm correct, you got to start at the French Cafe and has since moved on into private catering.
And I enjoy good sauces, you can tell. Good luck.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, what authority do we have to give you this? You want air? You basically want air.
There's a county building that is just to the north of our. Just to the north of our property.
Okay.
And the county has ownership of a parking lot that is on the west side of our building that we're looking at. So, if you can see on page 4 where the dashed line occurs.
I thought the west side of that building was the United Ways parking lot. Is that ours and we lease it to them?
Yeah. There's a small strip of parking that belongs to the county. It's about 45 feet wide, and then the rest of the lot belongs to United Way, I believe. And so, in order to have windows on a property line, you need to be able to say that nothing's going to be built there in order for us to go to the Building Board of Review and have that passed. So just by having a written agreement that says nothing's going to be built vertically on this lot, say for the next 99 years, can allow us to go to the Board of Review with confidence and having them know that we're not going to be butting up against a building or something that would violate building code.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Duda.
Well, I guess I'm getting my questions answered here. I'm starting to. So what the county is saying is we promise. I mean, and it obviously would go with the property that for the next 99 years this will remain vacant. The 16 feet.
Used only as a parking lot.
Right. Okay. I'm supportive. I love what you're doing, what you're proposing with the building. I've been through the building many times. Looks like a good use for a building that's been kind of puzzling for quite a while to figure out but it also seems to me that the county is giving away something of value here and not getting anything back for it. And that would be my only concern, mostly at council, as to how we proceed with that. I like the concept of where you're going, and I want to help you get there.
Right.
I can speak to, we're not the developers, but I can tell you that there's been a gap on this building for every developer that's looked at it. So the economics of the building are pretty tight. We intend to use historic tax credits to help close that gap. It's a difficult building to make work.
I'm sure.
So, I think the proposal would be a $1 per year lease kind of arrangement.
Okay.
That's what we would propose.
All right. Thank you. That answers my question.
Commissioner Tusha.
Quick question. When you're leaving the building, as is, and then when you add those windows, it's going to basically look like the other sides of the building.
Correct.
So you're really not going to mess with the architect of the building whatsoever, except adding the windows in, but it's going to look the same.
Correct. I mean, the intent behind adding the windows is so that we can create an apartment layout on the upper levels, and so it would be very difficult to create these really long, skinny apartments. So it would make the value of those apartments much lower. And so we can actually increase the units. The other thing that we're noticing with the current apartment trend is that in the downtown area we're building slightly smaller units. It used to be that we would consistently build 1,200 square foot lofts and things like that. What we're finding the market is really driven toward smaller apartments but more amenities. So that's kind of the concept. And so when you have the smaller apartments with more amenities, we need more window opportunities. So that's really the intent. Now, this is going to be a historic tax credit project, and so there will be quite a bit of negotiation with the Park Service, who administers that program, on just the nature of those windows. So I don't want to lead you to think that the facade of the west will look exactly like the other two majority facades, but they will have substantial windows in them. Usually, the Department of the Interior and the Park Service encourages us to make any new interventions in the building discernibly new. And so the fenestration will be, look modern, but still the real goal is to create big windows and make opportunities for apartments.
But if it's going to look modern, isn't that going to look strange against the other sides of the building?
Well, I'm trying to think of, we've done a number of these projects where we want it to blend comfortably, but we want it to be discernibly new. We don't want to try to replicate something historic. And so it's always a balancing act between finding that right design solution, but we've done it with numerous buildings over the years. And so we always we sort of assume the position of a student of the original architect, and then allow the original architecture to sort of guide us in how to shape those windows. So. Okay,
and this is one whole side of the building. So during that time, will you have to close off that parking lot?
I think the interruptions would be relatively minimal. There might be periods of time where we'll have to work with the contractors to arrange for the construction. But I think the impact on the parking lot would be very, very minimal, and we could schedule that around the county's needs. So.
Okay, thank you.
And I did not catch the name of this gentleman.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Will Corcoran.
The last name is?
Corcoran, C-O-R-C-O-R-A-N.
Thank you. I've got a couple quick questions. Usually somebody is compensated more than $1 a year for air rights. If I was a private owner of that lot, what would you be willing to pay? I know they wouldn't accept $1 a year.
Yeah, well, and I have to defer to the we're sort of representing the architectural component, and we would probably need to bring in the owner and the owner's counsel and the person who's helping them to develop the project to answer that question.
The next question is, you're only going to be using the top 2 floors for apartments. Are you planning to have windows on the lower 2 floors?
On the lower 2 floors, there will probably be some ventilation. There is also, currently there's an overhead door that opens onto that parking lot. We're not intending to use that in terms of vehicular traffic, but there will probably be some windows on those lower levels. The substantial windows, however, will be on the upper 2 floors.
Okay. And the reason I bring that up is granting air rights above the 2nd floor is different than granting air rights to the ground. Because if we ever wanted to build a 2-story office building, we would still have that opportunity. I assume our lot is probably 45 feet by 132 about?
Approximately.
Okay. That's a substantial area. You can park quite a few cars in there. We can use it for offices. Granting the air rights limits our ability to resell the property at a fair market value and to utilize the property for our future needs. And I think we need to look for the next generation of commissioners and members of the community also. So for us to grant air rights without adequate compensation, I cannot favor that. And I just need to be upfront with that. Next on the queue is Commissioner Boyle.
I do favor it. I understand what we're giving up, but I think, how long has that building been vacant? And it's been off the tax rolls because it was the Army Corps of Engineers. They have a chance to produce some revenue and for everyone involved. And I'm sure you'll be taking advantage of TIF, but that's another issue. But, it's, I think on balance, I understand the issues there, and I understand how this is encumbering the property and so forth. But I think the option is to, if we walk away from this, what happens then is this building stands vacant on into many, many years from now, and we should take advantage of this great opportunity from a really, we have a presentation from some really professional people who know what they're doing. I had a question about the United Way. Are they involved in this at all? Would they be able to build on their park 45 feet away from us?
Yes. This would really only encumber 16 feet of the property that the county owns.
How much?
16 feet.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good idea, and I think it's a great project, and I think it's an excellent use of that building because I don't see anything else happening there at all. I mean, we had the opportunity to buy it. We didn't buy it. Right. And so, I think this is something we need to support fully, and I intend to support it.
Commissioner Morgan.
I was going to ask, I think it's a good use there and proposal. The only thing you'd like to be careful of, 100 years is a long time.
Yes.
I'd like to be certain that we don't see at some point something happen where those air rights become a valuable tool to develop that, and somebody else, like what's happened, I think, on UP's land, where you give it out and then people aren't developing it. They're trying to sell it for millions of dollars. Yeah. So that if it isn't this same use, that those air rights revert back to the county. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't be sold for some development someday. Maybe it's a good compromise in what Commissioner Kraft had said and Commissioner Boyle. Mm-hmm. Just that idea that as long as you're doing this, we just keep it the way it is and give up those air rights.
An escape clause should the development not go, or should they change the use where they don't need the windows?
Yeah, that'd be fine, but they may need to have it, the windows, as long as they're using it in order to do that.
Yes, I understand. And one consideration, I think, to make would be that the value of the building, the value of the asset. If the air rights went away on the sale of the building, then the value of that building is heavily encumbered because the future owner, it will likely go into. It will be difficult to occupy the building in the future without those air rights. So the investment that the developer is making would be a much more risky investment, I would think, if it would basically make them unable to ever sell the building. I understand kind of your perspective as well, but...
No, I think it's okay to have the air rights if they're selling it. I'm saying if some development came in for that whole block.
Oh, I've got you, yes.
100 years is a long time.
Right.
And the fact is that if it were to change in 50 years and they're going to develop the square block into something else, you'd like them to have the county get back the money to give up the air rights at that point. Now, I understand, is the developer this Catering Creations? They're the owner and developer.
They will be the owner, occupant.
So as long as they're doing it, or if I buy it and now I'm going to use it, I still have the air rights. But if the whole block's developed, then those air rights revert back.
Excellent.
If the development changed. Mm-hmm. Does everyone kind of, I'm not sure if I was clear.
And I still would like to know if the county didn't own that, if it was owned by private enterprise, what would they be willing to pay to a private enterprise for the air rights?
Yeah, and that would have to be something that...
I know,
Yeah.
as you explained, but I'd still like to know before we take a vote on this. And I do need to talk to Jerry Leahy and our public properties also to see what their input is on this. Thank you. I don't see any other lights on. Oh, Jerry, you are here. I didn't know you were here. Okay.
He's always here.
Jerry, what is your take on future potential use for this property for Douglas County or for sale by Douglas County?
Well, if I had the crystal ball to predict what would go on in that area, I probably couldn't put a number of years on it that would be vacant or non-development for an entire block type
No,
development.
I'm just talking about the 45-foot strip we own. Go on.
Well, that alleyway, let's just call it what it is. It's an alleyway and a delivery route and a parking lot for our .com employees.
Okay.
So we have to have access. And we've had other developers that have approached us on the same building, but their questions were always tied to they wanted the parking, and I've always said, no, you can't get the parking. Right. We can't lease the parking because we own it, and those are our parking stalls for our .com employees. So this came in a little different because it had a couple different uses, as Michael stated, and I think what was presented is obviously a positive. Commissioner Boyle has witnessed the catering group, and they're very, very popular here in town. I think they want to get into the downtown market. And then to do the loft thing on the upper two floors, I think makes it even more attractive. But, the 16-foot really doesn't, I can't see any development that we would have other than what we have right now, which is parking and delivery entrance to 408. If we were to build something, we'd be restricted to be below those 2 floors as far as height.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Tusha.
Jerry, and they're under the understanding that if we approve this, that parking will still be ours, and...
This has nothing to do with their rights.
I know, but once
parking.
you start getting catering and lofts in there, people automatically see that they have the parking space, and they'll think that they have access.
Well, they'll see how full they are, and they...
Okay.
That tow truck shows up once, that'll be enough.
Okay. Okay, and on here, this says for future approval. So are you going to work out an agreement first and then bring it back to the board? Is that how we're going to do this?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought it would be proper to have a presentation of the full board, and then if there's a consensus, then it'll be brought back within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
One more.
Jerry, go ahead, Claire.
One more. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. We're talking about the air rate from the ground up or from the second floor up?
From the ground up to the top 2 floors, correct?
Yes.
Well, it's from the ground up to the clouds.
Yeah. Well, so I just want to make sure I'm clear that there's no building can occur on the 16 feet. I just want to make sure I'm clear on it.
If we were going to develop something of our own, we would be 16 foot.
We need a 16-foot setback.
Yes.
Which you really would anyway.
16 feet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, it would limit the. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
No, go ahead.
It would limit the size of our footprint from 45 feet to 29 feet, and it's, who builds a 29-foot wide building anymore?
When's the last time we built a 45-foot building?
Well, some people do.
Okay.
That's kind of a magic point.
Jerry, you followed what I said as far as in the future, if somebody decided, hey, we're going to build that square block, keep that in mind on your agreement?
Yes.
as long as they're doing it, great. But if something happened where the new Civic Center is going to be there someday, I mean, 100 years, you think of how the city's changed.
Yep.
Well, and it changes all the time downtown. And any developer at any time is rolling the dice. I mean,
I think this is real positive.
Yep.
I don't disagree with that. I just...
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Tusha.
And I just have one other question. I totally agree with this, and I congratulate everyone on this. But I have one more question. If it's from the ground up, which is going to be basically yours, how is that parking lot still going to be yours if you're taking it from the ground up?
This is just for visibility.
Okay.
It's only air rights, not an easement.
Right.
Okay.
Just to clarify, the building code that we're citing doesn't allow us to put windows above another building. So that 16 feet, the reason we're saying from the ground up is that we can't have windows above another building. So
I appreciate knowing that because I had no clue to that code.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay.
And then, jury, we look forward to you bringing it back.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And is there anyone in the audience who had anything to add on this issue?
Can I get a copy?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Have this one?
Next, we have Child and Youth Services, Commissioner Rogers. Community Services, Commissioner Duda. Oh, this is my item actually under. Okay. Discussion and action on Omaha Convention Bureau's interlocal agreement set to expire December 31st of this year. Since we only have 2 more meetings and we have not been able to come to agreeable terms with the City of Omaha, that you saw what the city said they would accept and what we had offered. Negotiations probably won't be completed, definitely won't be completed because it takes 3 readings by the Omaha City Council to get their acceptance of anything. So in order to give them the opportunity for 3 readings, we need to act today, and we're going to have a new agreement that gives us a 3 months extension to expire on March 31st of 2012. And adding, it is the city's desire to reformulate the Convention Tourism Department into a separate nonprofit entity, preferably by or before December 31st, 2013. The parties will continue to jointly explore this option during the term of the agreement. We struck out things about the advisory board, which for all practical purposes does little, if anything. And we've added the new language shall expire on March 31st, 2013, and there are some deletions here. I would suggest that we accept this and present it to the City Council, put the ball in their court for the next 3 months. Substantially, the agreement stays as it is, with the minor exception of the advisory board. Rick, do you have anything to add? And I think there are people in the audience who may want to say something.
The only thing that I would add is in discussions with you, Commissioner Kraft, if the board does decide to go ahead and approve it, just a friendly amendment under item number 2. It currently says shall have a duration of 3 months. In consultation with the county attorney's office, I'd change that language to say expire March 31st, 2013.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, I had occasion to visit with Tom Mulligan about this, and I told him I really didn't know what the county board wanted to do with this, but have we had any direct talks with the president of the city council? Or
I have had, but not in the last 60 days.
Okay. I'd appreciate it if you'd touch base with him and see where we are on anything and what room we have to. He's very much in favor of what was presented to us, and I know that we're not so happy with it. But
it's as though, what was presented to us didn't acknowledge that we are actually the owner of it.
Yeah. Well, I talked to him about also attaching the name of Douglas County, and he said he didn't have a problem with that and all that sort of thing.
I'm not concerned about superficial things like the name.
Well, some people
I'm
I thought
concerned
were.
about the content of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And I think it's something we need to get resolved.
If the city wants, the city is the beneficiary of all the money that comes in.
Right.
Okay, but they're not putting a substantial amount of money in it. This year they're putting $500,000. It was from the committee meetings we had, it sounded as though the commissioners wanted us to have the city make a firmer commitment to dollar amount.
And Tom said that.
Yeah, and that's what was in our agreement, that the mayor just said, there's no way he'd accept.
Well, the city council's interested in doing that, so that's why I'd ask you to talk to him again.
I plan to.
Okay,
but
good.
Right now we need to get something.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'll support this. Support this. But
I'd appreciate that. And I thought I saw another light up here, but it's gone. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I would make a motion.
Yeah, I can't make a motion as chairman.
You could.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, I can?
Yes.
On the city council, I couldn't. Okay. I'll let you.
No, you can't vote. That's it.
I'd so move that we.
You can make a motion, but you can't vote.
I'd so move that we go forward with this understanding for the 3 months.
I'll second that.
Okay, as amended, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Motion second. Call for the vote.
Do we have anybody who's going to speak to this from the audience?
Oh, is there? I'm sorry. I had mentioned that earlier. Is there anyone who wanted to speak to this from the audience? Okay. No one, so call for the vote.
Just
the public hearing is closed.
For clarification, Mr. Chairman, in addition to the resolution, the attached contract is being approved as well?
This is the amendment, by the way, right here. Change that.
We're adding the date.
Right.
Rick,
could you address that answer?
I just, for the public record, want to be clear what it is.
Okay.
Was the question of what is the amended language?
No.
Well,
is the attached contract.
On the public record is the chair of Douglas County Board of Commissioners is hereby authorized to sign the attached contract.
Yes.
After it is edited to reflect the submitted changes.
Yes.
And there are a number of changes.
And what the intent there was, in front of the county board is the old agreement with strike-through language, language to be taken out of the agreement, and additional language that's denoted in red. The understanding was that if the county board were to approve this, then we'd be allowed to go back in and take out what's been deleted, add the new language to reflect the amended version of the document.
Hi, Dan. This is Mike Boyle. I'm in the county board meeting.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear that what you're voting on to adopt, if you want to consult counsel, is what's on the public record as far as the attached agreement.
And that is what we want.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think along with an amendment that Rick stated into the record previously regarding adding the date, the ending date under the term of March 31st. But it should be what's being adopted is the agreement that's in the packet before you, and it does have some strike-through language. But you're adopting that, and then the intent of the resolution is to have a clean version, obviously, signed and sent to the city.
Correct.
And one more thing, the attached contract has an executed by Douglas County, and it has a date of 2013.
Okay, that's slipped by. Rick?
May change that to 2012.
Up to
is that a friendly amendment?
The commissioners.
Okay.
Yes.
And this friendly second? Commissioner Rogers.
I'm just making sure that when we go down and it talks about, like, when it says duties of the city, let it be. Since we're going back through this, I know to make sure when it says receive entire proceeds, what does entire proceeds mean? is their half, or it's the half that they get right now, right? Because the early version I saw had entire proceeds, and it had like everything, and they would be over the two money and other stuff like that.
If I may address that, there's two aspects under the Nebraska Development Act. There's the visitor improvement funds and the visitors promotion funds. This is the old agreement where it's clear that it's just half of the hotel motel tax or the visitors promotion funds that would be ceded to the city.
Separate from the visitor improvement fund.
It pretty much leaves it as it is with the exception of adding some clarifying language and deleting the advisory board, because the advisory board has no real standing. It can make all the advice it wants. The meetings are just pretty much informative as to what is happening.
No, I mean, I definitely understand it. And that's fine. I just wanted, because I know the earlier version I saw had that, my understanding was clear, but I just wanted to go back and clarify that because...
That one part, yeah. It pretty much leaves it as it is. It's just clarifying language.
Yeah, I mean, and Mr. Chair, I would just say when you talk to them, I mean...
would you like to join me?
I actually would, because I think the concept that they have, I think there's this idea that, I mean, what you said, you reiterated that we actually own it. So I hope that they understand that the proposal that they come with, just to put it into a nonprofit entity does not do it any good. They have to put it in a nonprofit entity where you can really drive the marketing of it, and that's going to require some money. And I just want to make sure in that discussion they understand that it's just not a transfer of deal. I mean,
Right. And that discussion has taken place and is continuing to take place, and that's where the disagreement is. The mayor said, this is not direct quote, but the implication is, it's our money, don't tell us how to spend it. Okay? Don't tell us that we have to put in so much money. My feeling is the city is a beneficiary of this. They need to put in the same amount the county's putting in, because they are the ones who are the sole beneficiary of these dollars from increased tourism. We do not benefit other than money that we may collect on room tax that we then pass on to the city.
I would agree. I would think it's more like an 80-20 split because they get more of the money. But I do think that he's right. We don't tell him what to do with the money. But we have given him an entity to run, and if we're not happy about how it runs, we just bring it back.
And that is part of the discussion. But very honestly, well, I won't go there.
Let's just say, and I just want to say for the record, there's not an issue about how it's run. I just think the fact that, and I'm more so saying you can't drive it without something in it.
You need the money.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I plan to vote for this. I'd like to see the discussion. Frankly, I think this is a huge waste of time. This is an issue over which we should have no argument at all. These dollars benefit the community, and that's all I really care about. And whoever's taking credit, whoever's spending money, I really could care less. So I just think we should give up the turf battle. This is something that doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So I think we ought to be talking about issues of delivering services to the mentally ill and so forth. So I'll call the question, and let's vote on it and quit playing games with the mayor and all the rest. I just don't care about it. It's just, to me, ordering him to spend more money is a gauntlet that we're not going to win, and let's quit poking him in the eye. Let's move on. So I call the question.
He's called the question. We need to vote on that. Commissioner Rogers, unless you want to...
Yeah, I can say a quick comment. And we don't have to call it. We can just vote.
Comment?
No, I don't disagree.
Excuse me, I called the question.
Yes. Call for the vote on call for the question. Yep.
Motion fails.
So let's
Okay,
keep talking.
Commissioner Rogers.
My one more point.
Yes.
I don't think it's insufficient conversation. CVBs have shaped a frame of places. It generates revenue, and tourism is one of the most underrated drivers of economic development that it is. So I don't want to think this is a poo-poo deal.
Yes. And I'd like to add one quick comment that I don't view this as a turf battle. I view this as creating a model for success of the tourism industry in Omaha and Douglas County. Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I view this as a waste of time. Let's let them run the conventions. Don't distract them with all these little petty fights over who gets what and ordering them to spend money. Let's move on to something that we're responsible for, and that is the care of the mentally ill, the care of the indigent, and that sort of thing. We don't need to be doing battle with the city over their convention business. That's ridiculous, and I think it's a waste of time, and I'd like to see us move on. So let's get this resolved and do something that matters.
Care of the mentally ill, and you cut the funding for medications for the mentally ill.
Well, it could be done because it did not affect them dramatically. Even Mr. Sheehan approved it, so I resent that comment.
Well, the comment stands.
Well, I know it does, but you're incorrect.
We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
What on what?
On what?
Mr. Chairman, the previous motion was voted,
failed.
Did not pass.
That was on the calling the question, which now we need to vote on the question.
That's correct.
You're in an area that I'm not familiar with in terms of a motion to call the question.
That means demanding a vote on whether or not
it's basically end the debate.
We can end the debate.
But does it require a motion and a second?
There was.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
There was a standing motion and a second. Commissioner Morgan, and was it Commissioner?
Well,
no, there wasn't a second on my motion.
If the previous
this
vote,
is why it's a waste of time.
Mr. Chairman,
would somebody like to remake the motion?
Well, I believe it's still on the floor, but you're willing, Commissioner Morgan, to
absolutely
restate the motion. I will
to go ahead and approve it for that
the 3 month
period. April, I think it was April 30th. Was March 31st. 3 months.
So,
okay, I just
we'll explain.
Want to do this properly, of course. And so the motion that was previously voted on was
just ending the debate.
Calling the question.
Diane, would that be accurate?
I'm not sure if it's clear in the record or not what you were voting on, but obviously some people thought they were voting on that. Maybe everybody did.
Called the question.
Yeah.
And the reason they voted no was because they wanted to have more discussion.
To allow Commissioner Rogers to speak.
That was
what we had on the record as to what you were voting on was the motion from Commissioner Morgan and Commissioner Boyle on the adoption of the resolution and agreement.
That was an error in the interpretation of Mike Boyle's call for the question. Calling the question is just ending the debate and voting on whether or not the debate should be ended. And that's what the vote should have been on. So we'll need to correct that error.
Again, I'm not sure what was on the record as far as what the motion you were voting on. Obviously, it sounds as though the board members all knew what they were voting on.
Let me try to. Diane, what I'm thinking we could do is somebody, except we all were on the losing side of that deal because it was 3-3 vote. So I don't. Usually, you can have the side that wins make the motion. No one won. It was a 3-3 vote. So I'm not sure.
I think that motion failed because it was a tie anyway. So you can go forward with. And
a
I
new
think there's
motion.
still a motion on the floor regarding the underlying agreement itself.
Well, if I can do it, I'll make the motion that we go ahead and pass what our chairman has requested to go till March 31st, 2013, adding the date Rick mentioned, and we move forward with that resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Okay, next we have Health and Human Services. Commissioner Borgeson is not here. Is there anyone who wants to comment? Okay. Human Resources, weekly personal... Pardon? Oh, Criminal Justice, Commissioner Boyle.
Well, these are placed by you and Commissioner Rogers, so why don't you go ahead and talk to us about them.
Commissioner Rogers?
Basically, this is the letter we heard 2 weeks ago when we had the presentation about the funding for workforce development dollars, and that was a 70-30 formula where traditionally right now it's split evenly throughout the state. The recommendation through this letter is to take 70% of it and split it through the 3 counties, and the additional 30% to be targeted toward areas of high poverty, which is based on other formulas in Oklahoma and Florida and some other entities. And the board agreed to Nicolette Patrick write the letter. They've come to agreements. This is the agreement of the letter, and we're ratifying it.
So we need
and a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call for the vote. Okay.
Motion passes.
Human Resources, a weekly personnel report from Civil Services as presented. Legislative issues on Friday, the 30th at 8:30 at the UNO Alumni Center. We will be having a public meeting with our state senators discussing items of legislative interest. Rick, was there something you wanted me to add on that?
No, I think just announcing the meeting should be sufficient.
Okay. And then item 3 is discussion of the JDI coordinating position. And JDI stands for Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiatives.
And we were going to lay it over.
I was going to lay it over. The only concern I had, somebody brought it up to me, is I understand, are we doing interviews between now and the next meeting on this matter?
It was posted. It was posted before.
But when would the interviews start?
I don't know. Lee was supposed to...
We're getting the roster this morning,
okay.
And the interviews are going to be scheduled, assuming that Judge Daniels and Tom Warren would be available, and Commissioner Rogers at the end of this week and at the beginning of next week.
The only concern I have, and I want to honor, Commissioner Rogers' request to lay it over, the only thing I was concerned about is I don't want to mislead the people that are being interviewed. If we don't fund it for the next couple of years, we have to pay back the money. I'm fine with going forward for the 2 years. I want to be certain I, as a commissioner, am not supporting at this time going forward indefinitely, and that person's hired with the understanding, hey, this is a 5-year, 8-year, whatever year job if I do the job. So I want to be careful about what we're doing here today as far as those interviews, so we don't mislead the people being interviewed, if I'm making it clear.
Yes, and we only have 2 meetings left. Lee, would you come up to the top? Okay. How does laying this over affect filling the position? Because if we don't fill the position, we have to pay back the government grant. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with the grant and the provisions of that
yeah,
in respect to the job. Commissioner Rogers, perhaps.
I checked that, and you do have to pay it back.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It needs to be laid over because there's a bigger discussion when, the resolutions that were passed, the board sign off, there was understanding that the funding would fade off. Just like when we went into the JAG, it started that way and the funding fade off. So the understanding that as the system evolved, there's money moving in the system all the time. I mean, last year, just because of budgets, we cut the $17,000, $700,000 we had out of home placement. Now, depending on how things go, as said, the systems change and money's freeing up. The issue of the funding, to me, is not so much a big thing, more so than the commitment to the process that started 3 years ago. I think the funding can be found in the system. And there's some conversations that have been had about how to make that happen. So, all the discussion is like, what happens with the grant funding position. My personal thought is it's in the system. We just need to have the discussion. And my hold-off was to have a discussion next week at full board, because I know Commissioner Borgson and I have been in some conversation. So that's why I wanted to lay it off.
And
I got a request when you're done.
Okay. Joe, the funding for this position, when it comes out of county funding, comes from which department?
Right now is the way it's set up. It's been in the under the commissioners group under administration, so it's being funded in general from the general fund and specifically for administration, and that's how it's been initially set up.
Okay. Since it was initially set up that way, does it need to be maintained that way, or can it eventually be transferred to I believe a more appropriate department?
It doesn't need to be maintained, but the strength of the position that it voted, it was lined up where it reported to the CAO, and so it doesn't have to come out that line.
Okay, that makes.
It was there because it came through the grant. It didn't have to come out that line.
Now I understand. Okay, and Lee, is there any problem with laying this over a week?
Not at all. We'll provide Kathy Kelly with the list of qualified applicants, and then it's them to take that forward, and we're just stand by to assist as needed in respect to the employment process.
So we will, some other people wish to take Pam's first, then Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you. And I understand we're laying this over for a short period of time, but I have a really major concern because of the fact that it's not going to be 100% grant funded. So, we're going to, and I don't recall the amounts, but the next year we as administrative services, you have the grant funded, plus you have to put money in, and then the following year you're going to have a little bit more grant funding, plus we're going to have to put additional more money in. Where are we going to come up with this money?
Second year is a little less grant money.
Okay, but still, yeah, you're right. And so we're looking at, if it was fully grant funded, I wouldn't have a problem with this. But we're already running into budget cuts, shortfalls, and now we're looking at something that we need to tell those people that we're interviewing, this may or may not be a permanent position, because I'm not sure exactly how I am currently going to vote on it because of the fact that we have to continually put more money. It won't be 100% grant funded. I know this is laid over, but I just wanted to, throw that comment out there. I think we need to tell the applicants we don't know where this is going to go.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I see where you're going, but I don't think, I actually don't think that should be done, because basically anybody employed in the county can be laid off at any point. So, the only thing that this is grant funded, that's the only thing. The fact is, like I was saying, I think when all of the resolutions came, the board agreed to the commitment to it. We were committed to a process, and the fact is that I think there's money in the system. Over the time, the money has reduced out the system, money has opened up, and I'm fine with the discussion, because I think the discussion as it's being framed now is bigger than a grant funded position. This is the way the JAG came in, and few positions are funded eternally through the grants. The understanding with the Crime Commission money, again, similar to how the JAG came in, is that it was 3 years full funding. It tiered down at the 2 with the commitment for the startup. This was the same way. And so, I don't think you hold this position up, because any position that's listed on the list, we could decide not to fund. Anybody that's an employee, we could decide not to hire. And so if that was the case, we should just stop hiring everything.
You took your light off?
I wanted it on.
Your light was on. You were next.
Okay. Great. That's what
I don't know what happened to it.
Let me just ask a question of Lee.
Sure.
The person's being interviewed, will they be told what? If I'm applying, is this a permanent position, or is it just for the time of the grant?
Well, I think that would be a question. I mean, that question is to be directed to Kathy and the people who are going to be doing the interviews. I think that should be told them up front that this is a position that is grant funded, either 100% or partial in some respects, that the grant will last, I think it's a 3-year time frame, so that they're aware of it right up front. And if they decide, well, I don't want to continue with this, or they want to continue, at least they know that right at the outset before they, say, quit their current job and accept this. I think that should be said right at the outset of the interview process. And I know Kathy is putting together a list of people who do the interviews. We typically are not part of that unless asked to assist with the interviews. That's the hiring department. So,
okay, that was all that I want to do. Basically accomplish that we don't mislead the people. Now that's up to the board to decide, but I would prefer that we just say that up front to the people, and then we have our further discussion about it.
Okay. I think that's very appropriate. Yeah, that the direction of the board to the individuals who are doing the interviews and the hiring, that they communicate that to the applicants at the start of their interview.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyle.
Well, that was going to be my point, too. I think Commissioner Tusha and Commissioner Morgan have covered it, but I do think they ought to be told that, and I understand that, positions can evaporate and we can shut them down and all the rest, but I think if I were an applicant for this position, you assume that you don't really think about it ending, you think about it starting, and that you want the job, and I think that they need to be told that this is a grant and these things, this is looming, so they should be aware of it. The other thing I'd like to bring up is I've heard some criticism of the department, the operations, and questioning the purpose and its interaction with the youth center and so forth. I'd like to have that information before we're asked to vote on this. If there's some difficulty going on with accountability or effectiveness, need, duplication, whatever it is, I've heard talk about it, and I'd like to have it clarified, keeping in mind, of course, that all of our emails, in case you read the World Herald, are public record. So, but I would like to have that information before I'm asked to vote on this. What is this position doing? I've heard that it's not needed, frankly. But I'd like to have that information before we're asked to vote on it, up or down. So if anybody has information about that, or can give me information and all the rest of us about the effectiveness of this office, if it's delivered what it's promised, I'd like to know.
Okay. Commissioner.
With what you just said, Commissioner Boyle, and I agree with, I think maybe we don't need to even bring it back for discussion, and maybe it should be later after we get the person hired. We're making it clear to the person we're only funding it during this grant time, and then we look at it down the road rather than next week or the week after. There's no urgency once we move to that, and then you can get some information.
After we hire the person?
Well, we're telling the person we hire them
during the interview
that it's just in the interview time. We're telling them that it's only for the grant time.
I understand that, but my point is that I've heard criticism of the position itself and the operations and whether or not it's effective. And I think it'd be a little odd to hire someone and then look into whether or not the operation is effective.
No, I'm going to wait. No.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Are you saying that, hey, maybe we shouldn't even be...
Well, that's what I've been told, that we shouldn't even fill the position. So,
but if we don't fill it, then we're basically owing the money back, I think.
Maybe so.
I can respond to it. I mean, I'm fine. I want to have that discussion because the fact is that when every resolution came to the board, every department was vetted on this. And I'm assuming you say there's specific information coming out. I mean, that's why I wanted to lay it over, because I wanted the full cadre of the board here. I wanted the co-chairs to come and other people, because there's been few people, if any, that said the position's not needed. Now, if there's, issues coming out of, the youth center in some regard, I've heard those issues, and I've talked to Kathy about those issues, and we've addressed them on a couple of pieces, and I expect there to be complaints there.
Well,
because, it literally is changing the way they operate. So I'm just saying, I'm more than welcome to that discussion and look forward to it next week.
Let me make this very clear, and I know I'm speaking out of order, but I do need to say this. I have no concern about it. I just want more information, and there are no complaints coming from the youth center, just comments about is it really interfacing well with them. So this is not coming from leadership complaining. It's just observers, people in county government, in positions of some authority, who are making comments about this, and I'd like to be sure that we're investing in something proper. I intend to support this position today. I mean, if you had to vote today, I'd support it. But I just have questions.
Let me refrain from the record so I want to be clear. I'm not saying complaints there neither,
good.
But I do wholeheartedly welcome that conversation next week, because if there's anybody in the system complain about it, they're supposed to complain. And I mean, I made it very clear with people when we were going down this road, you were going to squeal, you were going to be hurt because it's going to change the way you do some things. Yep. And it's basically the conversation we've been having for the last couple of weeks about that. So I wholeheartedly welcome that discussion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tusha.
Hey, I just have a quick question, and Lee or Kathy, or I don't know who can answer this for me. Can we hire that person on hours of grant funding only and not have the county give any funding?
I'm not familiar with the grant or the wording of that. You can always hire a person in a part-time status.
Yeah.
And that part-time status, I assume, would be, if you're looking at doing that, you could say, well, there's money for 25 hours a week, 30 hours a week. That's the grant money, so they'd cover that amount of time. Thus, it's just they're only being paid by grants, by the grant money. There isn't money going in, county money going into that to make it a full-time position. It could be structured as a part-time job. I don't know, but again, subject to what?
No, it can't. That's not the provision of the grant.
Yeah. Okay, and as I say, it's grant provisions that dictate that. So.
Commissioner Rogers.
I mean, to address the board's concerns, like I said, it was always understood this thing would be phased in, but there are other sources. The discussion should be about where it comes in, because the fact is that there was always a discussion about once it faded that you could fund it through JBIG money. You could fund it through other sources. There are sources there. But I think the conversation next week definitely needs to be an understanding of what was there when it was signed on and the commitment to the position and where it plays out. Because half funding the position to part-time deal basically eliminates everything that's been done to change the system. I mean, that basically is somebody that riding bird dog on this. So my main point is saying there are funding sources that can fund this thing. The question really now becomes, do we fund it out of the general fund or do you fund it out of some other places? And I think that's the discussion you had in respects last week. Because initially the goal was always, once it gets through the 3-year period, you would phase it with JBIG and you can come back to go there. Now, JBIG's a whole nother discussion because of the physical cliff, but at least as far as it's known now, there's still money there in the plans to get there. So, I think there was always plans to take it to its completion.
Commissioner Tusha.
And Chris, no disrespect, and I understand what you're saying, but 3 years ago we were in a better position than we are now. And so if you're looking at funding from someplace else, then somebody else is going to get cut again on their budget because of the fact that we need to give funding for this. But
it's the same decision we made last year, and I'm fine. I mean, if that's the case, the budget's been bad for the last 3 years. Every year we come up here and make a budget decision, we're playing musical chairs about what's the priority. So that's what I'm saying. I think next week that's just a discussion that we have to some degree.
And to follow back up on that, okay, yeah, so let's say we're going to give them their funding, and then you're going to turn to somebody else and say, well, we need the funding for this, so we need to take the funding away from you. So this is, especially with the times we're looking at a major shortfall for next year. We don't know what the budget's going to be. We don't know what we're going to be asking for every department. I just think if the Board of the Commissioners choose to not have a tax increase, then we need to really watch where we're putting our funding at. Thank you.
I agree. And the only thing I want to say is I'm not saying it has to be taken. our whole juvenile justice budget and where it plays out, there's money in there. You'd have to reallocate some stuff, but I'm not saying it has to be taken anywhere. There's needs that because of things that may be getting done that aren't there anymore, and there's a way to get there.
Okay, there is no action needed on that since it was just discussion. There is need for an executive session, but I have a couple announcements to make before that. The executive session will be for labor negotiations and labor issues. There is a community service committee meeting 15 minutes after we get out of the executive session.
I'd like to make it 10. We've got people here for that.
10, okay, 10 minutes after our executive session up in room 903. And our state senators' breakfast, again, is Friday, November 30th at 8:30 at UNO Thompson Alumni Center.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I just interrupt for just a second?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that the commissioners are reminded that there's an interim study hearing on the inheritance tax at 10 o'clock in Lincoln on Friday morning. And I wanted to know if this was briefly discussed at the Tri-County retreat a week ago yesterday, that our lobbyists would leave the breakfast early and get down there, and Joe Lorenz is willing to go down also to testify about where the county stands on this, and they want to know what other monies could be shifted to the state, or more duties shifted to the state. Joe talked to Larry Dix yesterday, and I just wanted to make sure that there was no objection to that.
Okay. I do not object. I don't know about the other commissioners. Yes, Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I think that's a good plan, Kathy. That sounds like a reasonable thing to do. I did want to make a comment about yesterday. Chair Kraft and Commissioner Duda and I attended a meeting with the governor and folks from Sarpy County and from Lancaster. And there were about a dozen of us that sat there, and we had an hour-and-a-half meeting with the governor. It was really kind of a hair-down meeting, and I thought it was very good. And the governor, we talked to him about the inheritance tax, and he was not happy about it. And I did defend it. I said that, we gave the money because it is a health issue and primarily, and we got a bonus of good economic development, which we usually don't get involved in, and that it really represents, and Commissioner Kraft pointed out, the real percentage that comes out of that $11 or $12 million of revenue is really a small percentage on an annual basis. So he seemed to be interested in somehow making that up because Mr. Commissioner Hutchins from Hudkins from Lancaster County talked about, who's a very active Republican conservative kind of guy, kind of like our commissioner, who over there. But anyhow, yeah, another farmer. Anyway, talked about the kind of property tax increase this would bring about if we had to make up that in Lancaster. It was a significant amount, as it is in Douglas. So I think the governor's he's looked interested in trying to figure out a way to make up that revenue somehow. So I think we're in the ballpark. Commissioner Duda asked a very good question about who really pays the inheritance tax, which is really an interesting one. My experience has been that it's people who really, in many cases, don't even know the decedent, that they're so far removed, that they're living in other states, never heard of the person who died. It's just amazing what goes on. So anyway, I thought it was a good meeting. We're going to be meeting again in February. And it was really very cordial. And Sarpy County got blasted a couple times, we sat back and we got blasted a couple times. Lancaster was the only one that got off scot-free. So
it was a very good meeting.
It was a good meeting.
Does anybody object to the lobbyist and Joe going down there? Okay.
No.
Okay, just want to make sure. If we could have a motion to go into executive session.
Second. This is strictly for labor negotiations.
Labor negotiations, is there that? Yes. So if we could, we have a motion second, call for the vote.
And community services will meet at 9:03, 10 minutes after we come out.
Motion passes.
Motion to reconvene and adjourn.
Second. Call for the vote.
Okay. We have 10 minutes upstairs.
Commissioner Kraft? Commissioner Kraft? Are you a yes then? Yes. Okay. Motion passes.